I was very fortunate to be introduced to Dr. Badrinathan. One of my former student parents introduced me to Dr. Badrinathan. Thank you, Aditi ma'am, for introducing her. And it was an instant, I had a sense that this is going to be one of the special sessions at our conference, just like we had Kiran's session yesterday. So I'm really looking forward to this session. Thank you for agreeing to come to the IC3 conference, the inaugural one. We always say that to support the plane when it hasn't taken off is the most challenging piece. And so we appreciate your coming and spending your time here at the conference. And I just want to present this little plaque for you. Thank you very much, Dr. Badrinathan. Welcome.
Good morning to all of you, dear friends. At the onset, of course, I have to thank Ganesh for inviting me here to speak in this wonderful and very joyous event. And he started by putting a huge responsibility on my shoulders by saying this is going to be one of the special sessions. So that's a tall order. At the start of the day, it's nice to be the first speaker than the last speaker because so many people have said whatever you wanted to say. So when you're speaking first, you always have the liberty of saying a lot of things that probably other people would want to say. So I thank you all for being here rather early in the morning. Ganesh, when he met me and briefed me about this conference, he said, I would like you to speak about your unconventional paths, your unconventional careers. I think I shall speak rather about the careers of my heart. And to do that, I shall have to begin by telling you my story. I am a performing artist. I am a Carnatic vocalist, classical music of the south of India. I'm also an academic. I'm a professor of French. I'm a researcher, trainer of trainers. So my journey has been wonderfully transformative. I grew up listening to music. My mother Padma was a delightful singer. So there was music all the time in the house. I do not even know at what age I started listening. There is no age. It was right from the day I was born, even before that. She had a beautiful voice. She would sing when she went about her daily routine, whether it was the kitchen or outside. She would even take time out for her own rehearsals and practice. So I grew up listening to this very melodious voice of my mother. And my music lessons with her would happen. There was no specific time or day of the week it would happen. There were ragas that I liked, those that I didn't like. It's a question of intuition, of instinct, and we would sit and discuss, and thus I progressed in music. My mother was also a teacher for little children. But she had given up her job as a teacher when I was little, and she would often narrate things to me about her classroom. She taught these little children, and at many instances, she has told me about this theatrical production that she did called 10 Little Mice Sat Down to Spin. And she had harnessed the resources of every child in her class, put in theater, a bit of dance and movement, and of course music. So I guess there were many little mice that sang, danced, and they were involved that day. And it must have been a hugely transformative experience for them. Clearly, these children were besotted with their teacher because in Matunga, where we then lived, when my mother and myself, we would walk down the streets, very often gentlemen, grown-up gentlemen, because I was then a child, would stop her in the street and tell her, "Do you remember me? I am a doctor, I am an engineer, I am an accountant, and I never forget the classes that we had with you." So she was their ideal, a role model, somebody who brought out the best in every child in the class, who showed them the warmth that allowed them to explore themselves and gave every child in the class a space for themselves. She was, for them, the role model Padma teacher, as they called her. And my mother also automatically became a role model for me. A role model of someone who did everything that she did with a lot of passion, and everything that she did with a lot of sincerity, honesty, and integrity, values that I cherish and that I would like to transfer to whoever I can. When I was a child in Bombay, growing up in the 1970s, there was very little entertainment and other forms of distraction. So every weekend almost was spent in a concert hall, listening to musicians. Staying till the very end of the concert, I would fall asleep in the concert hall, but it didn't matter. We went to so many concerts. So many musicians would come home. There was always music around. And mind you, this was the era before the tape recorder came and none of the very high-tech gadgets that we have today. So there was live music, and all the time listening to music. And in order to be a good musician, you have to be a good listener. You have to listen to a lot of music of different types, different genres, different varieties, different types of musicians too. So that is what allowed me to construct my world of music. There used to be a great musician by the name Devakota Narayana Iyengar. He was a legendary Veena player. And in those days, there were many great musicians that made Bombay their home, Bombay as it was called then. And they would teach music in different music schools. So my father was learning Veena from Narayana Iyengar. And every Sunday, this great veteran stalwart would come home. Much to the delight of my parents, much to my consternation and irritation as a child. I would peep out of the window and I would see him coming, and I would be so angry that every Sunday this man comes home and he occupies the entire morning playing Veena. But this was the nourishment that I got as a child. I listened to some of the most fantastic maestros, great music. Imagine a maestro of his stature coming home, picking up the Veena, just playing spontaneously, different kinds of rare ragas, compositions that he would just spontaneously break into. And my mother would often say, "I wish we could record this. This is for posterity." But we couldn't. And it was so beautiful. After so many years, I now realize the value of all this kind of inputs that I received when I was a child, and which allowed me to move forward and make choices in my career. My mother, as a daughter growing up in the 40s, 50s, she had unusual liberties. She was allowed to pursue all these passions, but she couldn't learn dance. Dance was taboo, not allowed usually in that time to girls coming from good families. And she had watched the legendary dancer Yamini Krishnamurti, and she was so enchanted by her grace, by her elegance, that she said, "My daughter is going to learn dance." And that's how I began my journey with Bharatanatyam. And I must say, I've had the good fortune of being trained under some of the best gurus some of the best teachers, whether it was in dance, the great Kalaimamani Mahalingam Pillai of the Tanjavur style of Bharatanatyam, my own mother in Carnatic music, and late T.R. Balamani, another stalwart teacher. So all this helped till the soil, nourish it, and helped the plant grow. When in school, I always loved languages, which is the other part of me. Even as a child, at home, I loved languages. I loved all languages. To me, a language has an identity. It has a texture. I feel that I can hold it. It has a silken touch. I could smell it through the books that I would read. I had the visual impact through the words that I saw printed or written. I had the auditive impact through the sound of language, and it fascinated me all along since my childhood. Every weekend, my father would gift me a book, and I owe it entirely to him to have developed this massive love for languages and for books. So I would read voraciously as a child and live my love for languages through the books that I read. And today, vicariously, I live through the books that my daughter reads and shares with me, which are very different from the kind of books that I read or I do read now. I remember still poetry that I read in school, a Marathi poem of a little grain of wheat, so translucent that the peasant woman could see her bindi reflected in it. And we had a fascinating teacher whom we called Aptebai. And she made it come alive in the class. I remember Premchand stories. I remember reading Mahashweta Devi. All these stories and what I read in language has remained with me. I learned French also in school. I recall to mind Teresa teacher, who was the French teacher. She was very honest with her work. She prepared her class well, and she did what she had to do. And I think these are great hallmarks of a good educator. And above all, she knew her limitations, and she had the humility to accept that. And she said, "This is all I know. Go out and learn more." And in my class, there was a girl who had come from Mauritius. Mauritius is a French-speaking country. I did not know then. And so this girl was invited by the teacher to read the lessons in class. And for me, it opened the doors of another universe. I heard French words with a French accent for the first time in my life. Pierre, vacances, souvenir, mousson, parler, marcher, regarder, bon, arriver, sympathique. And it was just pure magic, this beautiful sound of this language. French is often called a musical language. There's so much fluidity, interconnectivity between phrases, the rhythm of the sentences, etc. It opened also the world of the diaspora that lives abroad, because I learned that in Mauritius there were a lot of Indians. France is not the only country where French is spoken. So instantly, in one swish, I had acquired different culture. I had acquired knowledge about a different country. I knew a lot of things through this language. By and by, I went ahead to study French. I read Montaigne, Voltaire, Rousseau, Sartre, Émile Zola, Flaubert, Molière. I specialized in the language. I did my MPhil and my PhD from prestigious French universities under the guidance of great scholars. I always wanted to teach, so I became a teacher. And today I'm a professor and a researcher specializing in applied linguistics, didactics of language, culture, learner and teacher autonomy. So why did I narrate my story? Because I was fortunate to have had an environment that allowed me to seek what I wanted, to look within myself, to understand myself, to understand what my ideals were, what my interests were, and I weeded out the rest. I made sense of all these different entities. At no point in time did my parents say, you need to do this or you need to do that. But very much like Kiran mentioned yesterday in her keynote speech, after my 10th standard, I went to college. And the professor sitting there for the admission said, you want to do arts? So there was so much of surprise and shock on their faces. I said, yes, I'm very determined. I do not want to do any other stream. They said, come back tomorrow, think it over. I said, no, I've thought it over. I do not want to come back tomorrow. I'm taking admission now. I want to do arts. So if you had the marks, you had to go for science, medicine, engineering, which was not my cup of tea at all. Hence, I pursued both my passions in music and dance. Today, I concentrate more on music than I do on dance, but I live my Bharatanatyam through my demonstrations, my lectures, my travel, the workshops I conduct. And all these elements have provided me so many things in life that I shall be speaking about today to you. What category do these career choices fit in? For me, I instantly perceive one common element, and that is creativity. Indian music, Carnatic music, relies heavily on creativity, improvisation, manodharma as we call it, manodharma sangeetam, music that emanates from within yourself. So whether I'm on the stage performing, I'm in the classroom teaching, or I'm conducting a training for other teachers, or I'm doing research, I cannot just push aside creativity. I need to justify myself first and be happy with what I've done, and it has to be original, coming straight from my heart to me first, before I can make others happy with it. And if the element of creativity is going to be absent, then it's going to be just something that everyone else does. We are having molds and we're making multiple copies of the same thing. I've realized when I speak about creativity that people often misconstrue this concept. They think it has to be something exceptional, out of the world, something that no man has done before. A sculpture, a painting, something that's created in tangible terms. No, it's not that. For me, it's using your resources in an original way. Doing what everybody does, but with your own touch and stamp of individuality. Looking at it from your angle, from your perspective, from the lens of your originality, and that is creativity. In the beautiful city of Rouen in France, there stands this famous Cathedral of Rome. For those of you who have seen it, you know it's an imposing monument. You ask a layperson on the street, can you describe the Cathedral of Rouen? And he will tell you, towers, belfry, steeple, lovely facade, imposing interior. Tomorrow you ask the same man again, once again, to describe the cathedral. He will tell you almost in the same terms usually. But the French Impressionist painter Claude Monet painted the cathedral. More than 30 tableaus of the cathedral. Not one resembling the other. He studied the play of light, he studied the cathedral and painted it at different points in the day. It looks different at dawn, it looked different mid-morning, it looks different in the evening, it looks different in autumn, it looks different in winter, it's luminous in summer. So this is what creativity is. We're seeing the same thing every day, but then you have to invest yourself and that special element in it. And this is what I got from music, from study of languages, from dance. I was endowed with that skill of creativity. It is a skill. You can acquire it if you start thinking in those terms. When you're singing a song in Carnatic music, for example, it has been written by a composer, set in music. So what is my part? Am I just going to replicate that? I do. But then there's also the element of creativity that comes in that makes it my own. It's like a play by Shakespeare. He wrote it, you perform it, the play belongs to him, but the act is yours. So that is what I learned. Investing yourself fully into it and seeing where your personal touch can come in. And this automatically and intuitively I apply to all spheres of action in my life. When I was doing my PhD in France, my advisor, Professor Marie-Josée Barbeau, one of the greatest scholars, she said when she was reviewing my work, all this is very nice, but tell me, where's you in this? And that struck me like a thunderbolt. That's true. I've written pages and pages, but where's me in it? Where's my originality in it? Where's my reflective process in it? It's a question of critical inquiry. It's a question of looking inwards. It's a question of thinking and bringing out what you want to do and say upon a subject. It can be just cooking. It can be dealing with the classroom. It can be running a house. It can be teaching children, which is not as simple as that. So music gave me that lesson. My job as a musician is to bring out that me factor. My job as a researcher is to bring out that me factor. My job as a language teacher, as a trainer, is also to bring out that me factor in each and every person who is there, so that their identity comes out in what they're doing, and that makes all the difference. Music is a language. It's universal as you know it. It helps you transcend barriers. In my collaborative ventures with so many world musicians, I push the frontiers. I extend my reach. I'm trained in a very traditional school of Carnatic music. I'm a purist, if you ask me personally. When people listen to me, they know that this is a very traditional style of music, but at the same time, I like to extend the frontiers of my music and innovate, collaborate with other musicians. I've worked with jazz musicians, different types of jazz musicians, oriental percussions. I've worked with Iraqi maqam, I've worked with Azerbaijani mugham music, and each time I learn something. In fact, I learn more than something. I learn a lot from my fellow musicians. You can be a great musician, but collaboration is a different cup of tea. It's a different ballgame. It requires you to be patient. It requires you to be open. It requires you to have tolerance, respect for the other, ready to listen, accept, and realize there are greater things than what you're doing in this world. Those are the lessons that I got from all the lessons that I took in life. So each time I collaborate with a musician, the end product is something new, something brilliant, but it's not just mine. It's collaborative. I've done it with others. I know how to reach forward and take from them and give some of mine. My music, my academic pursuits, take me to different corners of the world. My travels open my eyes to things. I'm able to share my art. I'm able to receive a lot too. I'm very proud to be a cultural ambassador for our country. And when I receive appreciation, I think it's not me. It's the art, the knowledge that I have bequeathed, this precious inheritance, of which I'm a proud owner. It is that which has to be appreciated. And that has to be invested in others too. So I would appeal to every member of the floor, if you can, encourage your children to learn languages, to learn music. It's not to become a champion of Hindi or Marathi or French or Russian. It's just being exposed to the beauty of language. It's being exposed to the beauty of dance, exposed to the beauty of music. Today, all of you here are educators. Nobody knows better than you do that we're constantly talking about a changing world. We're constantly talking about educating children for a world that does not yet exist. We're all the time harping upon creating curricula more challenging than today's, more challenging than yesterday's, for a very challenging tomorrow. We're talking about global worlds. We're talking about erasing borders. We are talking about coming together. We are talking about understanding. We're talking about peace. Still, friends, day after day, we're seeing just the contrary in the world. It's ironic, but we are living in a world where there's ego, there's bigotry, there's intolerance. Music and even general education, I think, and I'm convinced about it, can bring us closer to these macro goals of the world. For one, music is profoundly humanistic. It draws you closer to mankind. It's a spiritual element. When you're singing, or you're performing, or you're listening to music, it touches the spirit. It touches, you connect with the person sitting there in front of you. Music teaches you to be in synergy with nature. Every morning when I hear the call of birds, this morning as I was getting ready to come here, a fan-tailed flycatcher was dancing on the fronds of the banana tree right outside my window. What a beautiful sight. What a beautiful sight. It's a dance of the bird. If at all you get to see a fan-tailed flycatcher, you will know that I'm not lying. It's the real dance, the dance of nature. And I remember so many songs, so many poems that celebrate nature. So my music helps me connect with the world. My language, my love for literature, my love for the spoken word, the written word, the heard word, helps me connect with something that goes just beyond the four walls of my house. And I see the profound beauty in all these things, the aesthetic element. And I feel happy about it. There is, to me, a huge parallel between the songs of Tyagaraja or Dikshidhar, some of the greatest composers of Carnatic music, academics and thinkers like Maria Montessori, Tagore, Gandhiji, Dewey, Paulo Freire. All of them had a worldview of things that transcended their own cultures, their own contexts, and their own lifetimes, and made them so relevant across time. Tyagaraja, if you listen to a Carnatic concert, you cannot escape Tyagaraja. If you learn Carnatic music, you have to hear the name of Tyagaraja. He is synonymous with Carnatic music. He composed his songs in Telugu. Most of his songs were very simple in structure. The music was Carnatic music, music of the south of India, Telugu, language of the south of India. But still, the spirit was human. He was communicating at the same time with each and every of his listeners. He was communicating with the Creator. He was communicating with larger mankind, larger values, and urging us to take cognizance of the same. And that is why Tyagaraja is still relevant today, centuries later. He was an 18th century composer. His music was personalized. It went beyond time, space. Today, in modern teaching pedagogies, we are urging educators to allow the children to learn. We're talking about learning to learn. We're talking about taking charge. We're talking about autonomizing the learner. all this requires creativity. It requires you to look within, to reflect, to bring out something from yourself. And if we as educators could do that to every child, then I think we won't be creating molds, we'll be creating individuals, each of them bringing something special from themselves. And doing that, I think they would adapt to the larger world, the world of tomorrow that we do not know yet how it's going to be. Tomorrow that can take any shape, but then these children can mold and adapt themselves from completely different angle if they're allowed to do so through all these kind of what we call as unconventional routes. From all the kind of teaching and learning that I received in my life, I was never in what scholars call as the received curriculum. At some points in time I was, when I was in an institutional setup, yes, I didn't have a choice. But there were many times when I was allowed to exercise my choice. I did not receive passively. I was asked to contribute. I was asked to think. I was asked to create. That helped me establish this ownership, sense of belonging, making what I learn my own. It's not something that exists within the book. It's not something that somebody else is singing. It's not something which the teacher is teaching. It's my own. It belongs to me now. I feel for it like I felt for the books. Tagore is one of my favorite writers, thinkers, educators, and he said this beautiful thing which has always remained with me. And although he said it in the 1930s, friends just think how relevant it still is in today's times. He said, we rob the children of the earth to teach them geography. We rob them of language to teach them grammar. Their thirst is for the epic, and we provide them with chronicles of facts and dates. How different is our classroom even today? We make some of the most interesting concepts sound so inane, boring, and we rob the child's interest for any of these. You cannot do it. You will not be able to do it. I think you should look at that. Instead, you urge the children and open as many doors as you can and let them make the choice. Many people often ask me how I handle two streams simultaneously. It is a challenge, no doubt. Challenge in terms of time, in terms of physical resources. However, at another level, I perceive a great deal of complementarity in what I do, in all that I do. Whatever I do in music, or in academics, or in dance requires improvisation, creativity, like I already said, out-of-the-box thinking. All this is immensely aesthetic. I see as much grace in a poem as in a well-constructed lecture, as in a nicely thought-about, well-progressing research. Language helps me to reach out to people. It helps me communicate, go towards the other. I speak many languages with varying degrees of expertise, but that's not the point. It allows me to go towards somebody else. It has opened the world of otherness towards me. It shows me all the heritage that's existing. When I went to Azerbaijan, I was stunned by the kind of respect that they have for Indians, the love that they have for our country, and I was also equally stunned to discover such a depth in their music. Great maestros like we have in India, they start learning from a very early age. They've got conservatories where they celebrate their music. So in that process, you start reflecting about your own culture. You appreciate yourself too. It's totally an intercultural approach. I go from myself towards the other. I realize a lot. I come back enriched about my own culture and my own identity. So I think language has this power. So does music. Lessons in force, lessons in elegance, all the Saraga has given me. Every raga has an identity. It has a character. When I'm listening to one, I feel it's so elusive. When I'm listening to another one, it's so robust. Listening to another one, it's so majestic. And you listen to another one, it's so frail. But then there is a grace, there is a force in all of this that I recognize in the course of singing, in the course of learning. There's curiosity that stems up inside you. So friends, for me, education of any kind is not just seeking information. That is what I have learned today after so many years of experience. It is about being in harmony with all existence around you. There is this golden thread that runs through everything around if only we seek to look and to search and to perceive. So my journey with languages, my journey with music, my journey with dance has provided me all this. You need humanities, you need art, you need culture, you need philosophy, you need religion in order to be able to appreciate this finesse in the world and the interconnectivity that exists in the larger scheme of things. So I urge you to help the children that you're dealing with to look at all the possibilities in the world and not to tell them, what are you going to do with language or what are you going to do with music? You can do wonders with all little things in this world. Thank you so much for listening to me so patiently. If there are any questions, I should be happy to discuss with you. I shall just sum up Mrs. Srinivasan's question because the mic wasn't there. She said, we're living in an age of instant gratification. Everyone wants everything quick. Children start learning today and they want to be somewhere tomorrow. How do we educate the parents? I do fully and 100% agree with you that children are not the problem. Their parents often are. They want to live what they want to live through their children, and I think it's grossly unjust. And we are in a very fast world where everyone wants everything fast. But you cannot learn overnight. Learning is a process of maturation, and I think you have to call the parents, have talks with them, expose them to experts who can tell them a few things and narrate their experience. I think a narrative biography works best, because it shows your real life experience. When I performed my Arangetram, when I was 15, my mother decided that she would like to organize my first performance. Arangetram is literally ascending the stage. But before she decided, it was my dance guru who called for my parents. And he said, you know, she has reached a stage where you ought to be organizing the Arangetram. So it wasn't the first initiative of my parents, because my mother always felt that I should learn more and more and achieve better expertise. And my guru summoned my parents to tell them it's time, because she is now evolved. But today, the very nature of a mentor and of a guru has changed. Everybody knows what are the different factors working in a modern world. All the ills of a modern world sometimes take a toll on the arts. So I think the only way would be to talk to the parents, not to give them lessons, not to preach, but rather to show them through action, through talks where people can share their own life histories with them. And then they would be convinced. You cannot be a fly-by-night musician or an educator or a professor or a researcher. You just cannot. I think parents need to understand that through lived examples. Any other remarks? It needn't be a question. It could also be just impressions, remarks, points. Yes, ma'am. There is a...
Thank you.
I beg your pardon?
I said I feel very sorry for everyone who was not here today. You brought out the essence of who a teacher is and of the beautiful experiences a child can have. Because we talk of so many externalities, but the beautiful analogy you gave, just growing up in that kind of an environment, gave you so much choice. I think it really came out well. So I'm glad, Ganesh, that there are going to be video recordings. I just hope many people will watch
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I wanted to also ask a question, but more so share a thought that came in. You said something where this was not education that you could get in a school or a college. A lot of what happened to you, like Jayashree just shared, was the circumstances. You had that soil in which you could sow the seeds. What was that point in your life when you felt the pressure that I'm going non-traditional? Was there a point in your life where you felt nervous about the choices that you were making? Because if I go down to Chennai, and I remember my presentation 18 years back, I was presenting, and I almost felt like in Chennai, and I'm just talking about South India in general, it was about studying engineering or medicine or going to jail. You had to choose between the three, literally. But all young people feel pressure, in my experience, at a certain point when they are outside of the crowd. Society has such a magnetic effect, and what you did effectively was you have thousands of people pursuing traditional careers, and you stood all alone here doing something which was very unique in that sense. And my counseling experience is young students, feel the pressure and give up. So did you feel the pressure, and how did you deal with it, if you did? And at what point in your evolution did you feel the pressure?
You rightly pointed out, Ganesh, that much of all this came from non-institutional, informal learning. And I think that holds true for anyone who wants to till and help their personality grow. You just cannot learn everything within the four walls of a school. You cannot learn everything from 10 pages of a book. You cannot learn everything from your master's voice. So you have to go out and you have to explore and you have to make yourself part of this larger universe. So this is a fundamental universal truth, and it's always going to be so. So unless and until the pupil becomes and surrenders himself or herself to all the larger learning, you're just going to be very, very restricted. And about my career choices, frankly, the real truth is, at no point in time I felt that I was non-traditional, unconventional. I was always very focused, and I knew that this was my calling. And you have to take risks. There's a French proverb that says, one who risks nothing gets nothing. So you have to have the courage to take risks. You have to do things differently. You perhaps might, hurt a few people in the path. You might disappoint some people in the path. But never mind, it's your life. You are the sculptor. So you've got to listen. When in school, we studied a little hymn called "The Inner Voice is Calling." So many decades later, it is still stuck with me. The inner voice is calling, calling. The inner voice is calling, calling. The inner voice is calling clear and true. There are voices all around me, my enemies and my friends. Do this and don't do that. The chorus never ends. But I shall always listen to that quiet inner voice. It's swift and definite, and I have made my choice. This was a song. I beg pardon?
Folks, I don't know if you realize, but Dr. Badrinathan actually represents India at a lot of international conventions, and we have one of our jewels in the country actually here. So we would love to hear your voice.
Certainly. What shall I sing for you? I think I'll give you a little snippet of one of Tyagaraja's beautiful compositions. This one extols the beauty of music, nada, the sound of music. And he says it's Brahmanandam. It leads you to supreme happiness. The Sapta Swaras, the 7 notes. Swadupala, Swadupala, Prada Sapta Swara Raga Nishaya Zahida Swadupala, Prada Sapta Swara Raga Nishaya Zahida Nadalolu Daye Brahmananda Brahmananda Manda Thank you. So I think there are no more questions. Can we close this session?
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Badrinathan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Thanks.